and we will sing Kadosh, Kadosh to the Lord of hosts, joining in the angels' choir, and forever we will be.
And here we are, Mark David Smith with you today. I'm by myself right now, but Daryl's on his way in. He was just here, and his sound wasn't quite right. So he's rebooting, and he'll bring himself in, and he'll be joining us today. So I know when you saw the original intro with the next chapter, which is Sandi Craig, Joe Cameron, Sherry Flannigan, you thought, well, the ladies will be here, but no, sorry. They're all in Sukkot, and I'm doing Sukkot at home. And so since I have a studio in my house, then we've decided to do the show and a few other shows, as a matter of fact. Rabbi Daryl Weinberg and I have decided to do a few shows that would normally just not be on at all. And it looks as though everybody thinks everybody else is God, because we don't have as many viewers, but they are archived, and we're finding that most of our live shows are watched after the show actually airs live. Very interesting, because people will come in and say, well, gosh, you guys don't really have a very large viewership on your live shows. Well, it's interesting to me too, but I think it's because it's like early morning shows, like what this is, and our prayer shows is on. So they are on so early that a lot of people either getting ready for work or going to work, or they're taking care of the kids or whatever, and they don't actually have the shows on. And then when things settle down, then they go back and they watch the archives. And it's interesting because it doesn't just double or triple. It actually, there's like 10, 20 times, maybe even 30 times as many people watch the archive of the show. Even I've noticed by 24 hours later that the number where you may just have like 8, 10, 12, 13 different people in to watch the live show, you go back and there's 60, 70, and 80 that have watched it within 24 hours. So a lot of people are just, maybe watching it in the evening or for lunch or whatever they're doing, and which is great. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it at all, and we're all trying to gear our shows so that it will be that way, so that you can enjoy the show one way or the other. I am Mark David Smith. I'm the owner of the Messianic Lamb Network, formerly Messianic Lamb Radio, and we went for 7 years on the radio. And 1 year ago, right now, this month in October, we switched over to YouTube. We were looking for an alternative to getting voiceover to Lamb Radio, and because Skype was switching up and it wasn't working for us very well, and we found Hangouts, and Paul Neeson actually turned me on to Hangouts and taught me how to use it. And Paul's a great guy. We're good friends, and we all kind of found that we really liked the way it worked, and it got the sound over to Lamb Radio. But then, since it was towards the end of the year, there were all these different things that were really not working with the radio station. We liked the video part of it, and that they came through YouTube, and they were all archived right there. So it took care of a lot of different issues that we were having with the radio station. So we decided, let's just switch over to video. And I think there were only like 4 different producers on the radio station that didn't come over to video with us. And hey, that's perfectly fine. Their ministry still goes on. And the Lamb Network is great. We network a lot of different ministries. Everybody that you see on Lamb Network on the videos, every person, whether they have their own show or a co-host or whatever, they all have their own individual ministries. And what we have found is that a lot of time smaller ministries, which you really, I mean, if you go look and pay attention, there's not really a lot of people on the Lamb Network that are big named ministries. And actually, there aren't any. So to say. And the reason for that is because their ministry is already big. They really don't need a network to help people find their ministries, and it's fine. I don't need them for Lamb Radio to be, or the Lamb Network to be successful at all. And I mean, we're successful as long as there's people that are really gleaning from what we have to offer. And so we everybody that's on the Lamb Network, all the different producers, hosts, co-hosts, all the different people, I know personally, and I know the integrity of their ministry, and that I handpick these people to actually do a broadcast on Lamb Radio. And so I know their integrity. I know what they produce. And yes, our doctrines and dogmas are all different. Doesn't mean at all that these people don't have value to offer the kingdom of God. And so, with that said, I enjoy having a network where we have a variety of different doctrines and dogmas, and people that have different aspects that they can do with their shows. You have teaching shows, you have discussion shows, um, you have people that can do interviews and prayers, and they're people that aren't interested in really doing other shows, but they can pray. So there are people on the network that can't really do live shows because it can't be set to a certain time. So they'll produce videos and give us those videos, and we'll put them up on the network so that you can watch them. And so it really is more of a conglomeration of a lot of different people coming in to give you what you wouldn't get otherwise, or you would have to go and find their individual ministries, and who knows when that would happen or how that would happen. But by coming to the Lamb Network, you get all these different ministries in one, and you can watch a little of one and find out if you like it or don't like it, and go on to the next one, or stick around and watch every show, set your notification so that you can know when different live shows are coming on, or whether or not we're producing just a video that we're uploading to the network so that you can see it. Your main concern, your main number one thing is that I have found, I've always done YouTube as far as going on and searching for things, but I've never actually done a YouTube channel, even though we've had the channel for a while. I've never experienced what it's like to have a channel. And what I found is that what you get with a YouTube channel is just a bunch of videos. And if you're brand new to our YouTube channel, then that's all you're going to see is there's just a big bunch of videos. And what are all these? And even if you go to the playlist, it's like, what are all these? So that's why with the banner that's up above, if you're on YouTube or whatever, you'll see on our channel on the banner above, you'll find that it is the Messianic Lamb Network. But underneath that, it gives you the website address, and in the bottom right-hand corner, you can click. I guess in the picture, it's the bottom right-hand corner. It switches everything around for us on StreamYard. But in the bottom right-hand corner, if you just click on that, it'll take you to the website. Now, on the website, let me just tell you, the website is really where it's at, because it's going to give you all the show hosts and who they're about and what shows they do. And, we have some people that do more than one show. And then it's also going to give you all the different shows and what those shows are about. Now, I am in the process, since we are still pretty new with this, is I am in the process of putting together each individual producer, host, or co-host, and who they are, what they're about, their biography, videos of them, and each show and what they're about. All that information is about, and who hosts it, who's on it, all that type of thing. And that way you can go find out who these people are and what the individual value of the show is to you individually. All the shows have value, but individually it helps to be able to find that out. And I mean, right on the very front page, as soon as you get there, then you'll see that it shows you the shows that for that day. You'll find it says today. You click on it. What shows are on today, and what shows are on the rest of the week, and that type of thing. So it's pretty easy to get around. And that being said, whoa, Daryl O, what be happening? What be going down with your old funky self?
I am here.
You're here.
I am.
And you sound like Daryl.
Yeah.
Wow. Very cool.
So we resolved the issue, did we?
We must have. It must be something in your settings that changes when I have my I have my webcam in one place, and most of the time my browser is over here. So if I did this over here, then I'd be constantly looking away from you. So I switch. I have 3 monitors. So I put my browser over on this side. That way I'm looking at you all the time, Daryl. What's up? What be happening, man? What be going down? You do speak jive, right?
Yep, that's it, man.
How old are you? You're 50, aren't you?
I am.
And I'm 65. You're just a kid, Jack.
I'd like to think so.
Yeah.
Some people accuse me of behaving like one.
Oh, well, you're one of the most mature, stable, and even-keeled man that I know. So you do have fun.
That's only because you see me for an hour and a quarter at a time.
Well, that's true. That's true. So, well, I know you have a ministry up there and you have everything going on up there, but I think you should get down here. I think you guys should take a vacation and come on down to. I know. It costs to take a vacation, right?
Mark, there are so many things that I'm waiting on to do. I do plan on traveling to see some of the Lamb folks. We desperately need to get over to Kenya. They're begging for us to come over. And I'm just sitting here waiting for the Lord to do something.
Yeah. Well, that means if you're waiting, That means you have time. So come on down, Daryl. That means you have time. Come on, man.
Well, if you can transport me like Philip, then I'm all for it.
So I may wake up some morning and you'll be sitting out on my front porch and I'll go, Daryl, what's up, man? He'll be like, I don't know. I was sitting outside my house and all of a sudden now I'm sitting here and it's the Lord has a message for you, Mark.
You're the man.
Nah, you the man, not me. You the man.
Four scariest words in all of Scripture. You are the man.
You are the man. I'm with you, brother.
Busted.
I'm with you. Well, this is kind of fun, I think. You and I have really not. We've been on different shows together, doing different things with other people, but we've never done a show together where we just kind of do things, you know. So, but anyway, it's nice. Hey, we have Ed. How you doing, man? Ed is on these. I think Ed has been away for a while. Just came back, and he says I like the new format. So I'm getting used to it, but it's much better. We like it. We like this a lot. I mean, it's fun to have our voices on, and even when we did Hangouts or even with Skype, we could see each other, but nobody else could see us, and it was just voices on the radio station. But now we all have to look decent and not sit here in our pajamas to do our shows, you know. So.
Yeah, Alan had to take the curlers out of his hair and take off the bunny slippers now, and he's still bitter about it, I know.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, no, it's interesting. When we first started the radio station, I can't remember the first year or the second year. I'd have to go look that up. But right around this time, well, at the end of this month, when our favorite pagan holiday always shows up at the end of this month, it was either the first year or second year, we decided to do the first ever, as far as we was concerned, virtual conference. And it was called Prayer, Praise, and Proclamation. And I literally spent about 2 months putting together a 3-day actual conference, like on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. You know, like when you would go to a big hotel and go to their conference room, and they would have different speakers speak on the 3 days, and then you spend the night, get up, and you commune with everybody and that type of thing. But we would start like at 9 o'clock in the morning and go to 10 o'clock at night. But I literally had enough people that I could schedule every hour of doing this. And then we would have me and other people on Lamb Radio, the producers, that would come in and buffer in between, you know, so that as soon as one person was done teaching, then we would talk to them a little bit and then let them go and bring the next person in and talk to them a little bit, introduce them, that type of thing. And we did a 3-day virtual conference, and it was extremely successful. We even had praise and worship people that would come in like and take the noon spot and play acoustic music live. We didn't play, you know, like music or songs. We literally had them come in, and even like what you do for an evening your evening venue, we'd have somebody come in and do a live 1-hour concert, like your opening praise and worship, and then the speaker would come on and do it. We did all that through Skype. We just bring them in, let them go, bring them in, let them go. And we did 3 days. And we did that on like the last weekend of October. And it was absolutely amazing. It worked really, really well. I have all the archives from it, but of course they're audio. And I have been thinking about doing that again, and I think probably next year sometime we might put together another virtual conference. Only the great thing about it, it will be like all of us where it's on video like this. But what I remember when I invited everybody and put the schedule together to get everybody together to do this at specific times, and I emailed them and said, it's Skype. It's not going to be broadcast, in video. It's all audio. So hey, just sit there in your pajamas and and we'll do it that way. And it was so funny because I got a lot of responses. Well, I like that. I've never taught at a conference where I could do it in my pajamas. So anyway, it was a lot of fun. I'll never forget that. That was one of the most fun things that we did about the conference.
Cool.
You've never taught in your pajamas, have you? It's a humbling experience.
I can't remember if I have or not. Usually when I speak to the Kenyans and it's about 3:00 in the morning that I do that, I still get dressed.
You do, really?
I do.
And it's just audio. What do you do it on Skype?
No, we do it on WhatsApp.
On what?
WhatsApp. On
WhatsApp?
the phone. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't know that one.
It's an app on the phone that allows you to do texting, video calls. So sometimes you can do audio and video. So if someone's overseas, it doesn't cost anything as long as you're on Wi-Fi. Kind of like Facebook, FaceTime, stuff like that.
Oh, I get it.
Yeah, but it's all encrypted. So
WhatsApp.
You've never used that before?
Never heard of it before this very second.
Oh, yeah. So you can get it as an app on your phone, and you can do group chats. So if you've got a whole bunch of people you're communicating with all at once, you can say mass texts and stuff like that. It's a really cool application.
Very, very cool. I like it.
So what I do is I've got one of the things we have to do for Kenya is we've eventually got to get him a computer too, because he doesn't have one. Okay. So he does everything on the phone. So what I'll do is I'll literally sit there with the phone like this. I'll put it on a little stand. And sometimes if his Wi-Fi is not that great, we can only do audio, and I'll preach like that. But this past couple of weeks ago, we actually did video. And man, oh man, I'm telling you, I haven't seen his congregation in a few weeks. When we first started back, I think it was January, we did our first one.
Yeah, give us that story. Give us a little background and let me know what the story is.
Well, I get a phone call on the ministry phone one day back last December. And there's this guy with this very thick accent. And he says that he's from Kenya and God has told him to keep the Shabbat and that he needs to go to a messianic lifestyle. And he would like me to instruct them on how to do that. Now, I don't know about you, but I get all kinds of emails from Africa saying, dear beloved in the Lord and all that kind of stuff. And, pastors wanting us to help them out. But this guy actually called me. And so I'm thinking, all right, so let's see where this goes. And anyway, the guy turns out to be legit. And how he found me, I still have no idea. Because if you do just a general search for messianic ministries, or I don't even know what search criteria he used, you'll probably pull up 5,000-6,000 of them or something like that. And yet he lands on me. And I guess he looked at the website or something like that, a little like what you did. And he calls me up and he says, can you walk us through this? Can you guide us? Sure. So we scheduled it for, again, 3:00 in the morning. We did it on Skype that time before Skype completely screwed up. And I can't even log into Skype anymore. I don't even know what happened to it. It's such
I know it. Microsoft took it over.
Oh, my God. Well, Microsoft has had it for a long time. But anyway,
I know
and when I was broadcasting, And I wore a jacket and everything else, and we're watching these people. And so I took a bunch of screenshots, and on the top is me, and on the bottom is them, and there you could see them all. You could see the hut that they're using for this like shed, I guess a tin roof shed or something like that. And we're doing church, and they were all excited about it, and teach us more. So we began to do this, starting to do this on a monthly basis. And this last time, I found out, I guess a couple of months after we started, that he looks after a bunch of orphans. So the story is that this guy was a Mormon, and somehow or another, and he sent me a testimony via email. I actually need to post that on my website. But he comes out of Mormonism, and God instructs them to start this congregation. And so I guess on the back of his property, they've got this building, and they start meeting there for church. And then he says the Lord began to speak to him and say, well, you need to keep the Shabbat. And then he's starting to sweat. It's just like, oh my gosh, what am I? So anyway, he's praying about it. And so finally he says, he gets up the nerve and tells the congregation, they said, well, we've all been waiting for you to come to us with this. It's like, wow, God, how come that can't happen here? Yeah. So anyway, so they decide to move the whole service to a Shabbat, and they're the only ones, certainly in Kisi, which is the city that they're in. It's a couple 100,000 people. It's not a big place. They're about 4 hours from Nairobi, which is a city of like 10 million people or whatever. And they're the only ones keeping the Shabbat there. Well, he's got all these orphans that he looks after. And so, we then began to develop the part of the relationship where eventually we did a fundraiser to feed the orphans because they've been going hungry a lot. But when we did the message a couple of weeks ago, and we were able to actually get back on video, I'm looking at his congregation. He's got close to 100 people there. When we started back at the beginning of the year, there was maybe 20, 25. So he's almost quadrupled the size. Now that includes the kids. So when, I watched all these kids Sure. at the back, but you've got every time we do a message with them, he's telling me that there's new people that have got, okay, do we have any new people? Yeah, there's 3 people, there's whatever. And then after I finish preaching, I'll ask, does anybody have any questions? And so they'll come up, and he's translating, or his assistant there is translating, because they do everything in Swahili over there, but a lot of them speak English anyway. And they're just growing, they're thriving. And he's like, you need to come over. We need you over here. And he wants to do some outdoor stuff, like, tent revivals and whatnot that you can do. In Africa, they do that, and you get 10,000 people coming out for stuff like that. And he says that he'll put together some outdoor meetings for us when we come over. So I'm just like, as soon as God releases us, we're making arrangements. It's amazing.
Wow, that's pretty cool. People get those emails from, you just never know, from all over the world, people asking for money to help, and, please pray for us and all this kind of stuff. It's just, if you did every one of them, you would be living out on the street and wouldn't have internet.
Well, I get a lot of them from supposed pastors who are saying, please come teach us. But this guy actually picked up the phone, and he had some sort of deal where he could call overseas, one number, he could call overseas. And so I would get phone calls from him. And just the other day, I was out, I was ministering to someone. We were going for a ride. And then I get a phone call from Africa, and I said, hang on a sec, I got to take this. And just chit chat. And you know what? He always calls me up after, thanks me, just wants to greet me, say hello. I got a bunch of pictures and videos from him with the kids now eating and what they did. And he says he's going to send me, an accounting of what they did with the money that we sent over, because he says accountability is very important. I mean, it's like, how come I can't get this in North America? So it's God's doing something amazing over there.
We're too distracted over here. We got way too many other things that are more valuable to us. I have learned the value of the word value.
Mm-hmm.
And let me tell you what, it's different in every individual part of the world. You
Yeah.
just can't even you can't even imagine sometimes how all that works. So, well,
Well,
thanks, brother. I've been very interested to hear you talk about it all the time, and I really didn't know any background to it, but
well,
I
one of the reasons that actually they're struggling financially is because as a Mormon, he was working for a Mormon company. And when he left the Mormon faith, he got fired. They got rid of him. So, here's this guy. Not only is he ministering, he's got a wife and 3 kids, but they've got over 50 orphans, and they have no means of income now because of the persecution of his faith. So
sure.
we were able to now, I mean, it's kind of ironic that, we've been going through our struggles here, and I've shared some of those with you and kind of alluded to them with some other people. And yet, I went to the mailbox the other day, the ministry mailbox, and got a nice big check for Kenya. And I just kind of looked up at God, and it was just like,
Yep. Yep. There you go. That's what it's about. Man. That's what community is about.
yeah,
God's community is about. The world's community, it's like the difference between hope and hope.
yeah,
You you know what I mean? I mean, there's hope has its general definition, but you can have God's hope or you can have the world's hope, and there's no other. It is cut and dry, right down the middle. It is black and white. If you have the world's hope, you really don't have, there's no foundation
no,
to the world's hope. There is no guarantees that that hope will suffice or even come to fruition. Where on the other side, if it's God's hope, you have 100% guarantee that hope will come to pass, and God does what He says He's going to do, and it's a true hope,
yeah,
But it's kind of the same thing. I agree. Very good.
indeed. So it's pretty exciting, and the fact that I was able, when we had my birthday last month, to gather my family together who are not believers and some friends to come up and do this fundraiser. And, my father said to me, we went axe throwing. It was, we have an axe throwing club here in Peterborough, and it is a lot of fun. The owner is actually a believer. He's been to our Passover Seder in the past. And so when I brought my family up, I thought, you know what, we're going to do a fun event and we're going to raise some money for these kids in Kenya. And my father, he came to me after and he says it really touched him that what we were doing. Because I said, don't give me presents. I don't want any gifts. We're going to take up some money for these kids. And now what I need to do is I need to put together a card, because I use a format called or a company called Send Out Cards, which is really cool. You can create your own greeting cards and put pictures on, stuff like that. And so I'm going to create a montage of our axe throwing and then what their donations actually did, and leave it as a memento for them. So it's you never know how you're going to be able to proclaim the gospel.
Sure.
And what's going to be used in order to reach people.
Sure. Wow. That's pretty cool. Pretty cool. Yeah, well, okay, we've bantered here. It's funny on these shows, these discussion shows that we do, we get carried away in the beginning show bantering and really don't pay attention to the time. And I know you have expressed that before. It's like, why are we spending so much time doing this and talking about this and this kind of stuff? Well, this morning it's your fault because your computer sound was messed up. It's all your fault. It put us way behind on everything. So I'm
Yeah, but isn't this what the show is really, and what the network is really about? It's talking about what God is doing on a
I agree.
lifestyle level.
I agree. Well, when I created the original Only Visiting This Planet, we did 6 days a week. I mean, it was Sunday through Friday, and I did shows every single morning. Sandi and I did, and we had different people on different days, and brought different people on, and it was literally a discussion show format, and it worked real good. Then again, when people started taking over the hosting of the shows, we called it "Let Us Reason Together," which was discussion, and that's kind of what we're doing. We're discussing the things of God and how they work with our lives in general. So,
well, I think in order to reach people, I think effectively with the gospel, I mean, just use Marvin as an example. And I've talked extensively about him. I actually just finished reading his book last night, and it's 500 pages of this guy should have been dead. That's what that book is really all about. There was even one situation where they got busted when they were on a case. They were undercover, and so they were found out. And it said 5 big bodyguards came to deal with them. They didn't have weapons with them. And somehow or another, none of the bodyguards was willing, because everybody was looking at the other guy to see who was going to actually lead. And they were able to scoot out of there. And I'm thinking, if that's not the hand of the Lord protecting this guy, he's 85 years old. He led a horrendous lifestyle. I mean, he was a heavy drinker. He was grossly overweight for a good portion of his adult life. And yet he has outlasted so many people that he, finked on and also worked with in the police force. One of his police cohorts, she died at 56 from stomach cancer. And it just shows that God keeps people, because he knew Marvin was going to come to faith at 85. And so he sustained him and kept him, because God desires that none should perish, but that all should come to repentance. And even if you do everything possible to try to extinguish your life, other than actually putting a gun up against your head and pulling the trigger yourself, then God will sustain you. And I'm just watching that, and I'm thinking, what kind of impact is this guy going to have now? I don't know how long he has left. I mean, maybe God just kept him until he was able to come to faith, and then he'll take him home, or maybe he's going to give him a ministry of 5 to 10 years or something like that, where he can now use this testimony in order to proclaim the gospel. But a lot of people apparently have read his book and gotten really angry at him because of the things that he did. I read his book and I'm thinking, God's mercy is amazing. And now that he has come to a saving faith, it's the challenge is now going to be, how do we shift that mindset of his to, instead of focusing on everything that happened, to now saying, well, this is what God did so that I can tell you this.
All right. That's good. Yeah.
And so even, this weekend, he lives about 80 miles or so from Niagara Falls, where we're going to be going down this weekend. And so as we pass through Toronto, we pick him up and we take him down. And, trying to make arrangements. The guy was a driver for years and years. He lost his license last year. So now someone else has got to pick him up. I mean, there's irony for you. But, he really is excited about coming down, and we're even making arrangements for him to sleep overnight so that I can, I don't have to make a special trip back, because 80 miles each way is a lot of traveling. Sure. To make that as an extra trip, because where I live down to Niagara Falls, it's about 220 miles. So it's a bit of a haul. And then to have to do an extra 80 each way as an extra trip to drop him off at home, then go back down again, it was too much. We did that the last time. So, here a guy is, he's been married for 62 years. He's now making arrangements that he's going to be separated from his wife for the days that he wants to get plugged into our community. And that's really what it's all about. It's, yes, teaching's important. And I have a teaching ministry. I mean, the emphasis and the focus of my entire ministry is on teaching the things of God. But we also want to be able to, you want to enact it. You want it to become real. And if people don't, movie producer, he wants his salvation story in the movie.
Wow.
So the producer is supposed to be coming up this month or next month or something like that. And he wants to sit down with the three of us and talk about this. That to me is worth more than any,
Sure,
new thing that I could have found in the Gospels about, what this means and the meaning of this Hebrew word, everything else. It's about the life. And so
sure.
the whole lifestyle thing, and what Lamb Network does is it pushes people to say, hey, listen, you know what? It's not about what we know. It's about what we do.
And what we do is, what is it that we do? No, we help people balance out their lives. We bring the gospel, we bring Torah, we bring a balance between the two. It's interesting. The church that I've been going to is extremely heavy on evangelism, and my wife and I was talking about it the other night, and she says, well, what it should, the balance in there should be is that the Christians go out and get people saved, then they send them to us Messianics and we'll teach them.
Exactly. I like it.
Yeah, I like it, but we ought to be out there, getting people into the kingdom too. I know you've heard me say it, but it's interesting because I'm sorry, I'm distracted by what we're getting into the text here. But you've heard me say we don't. There's no place in the Bible where Yeshua says go out and get people saved.
Nope.
He says go make Talmudim.
Mm-hmm.
Go make disciples. And to me, that really, once I got that concept, because I was a hellfire and damnation preacher, it was all about just getting them saved and racking up the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, it was about racking up the numbers.
So you're like the Jehovah's Witnesses with the notch on your belt.
It kind of was in a lot of ways, because we were huge advocates of just mass, getting people saved and then go on to the next one. And that verse literally, well, a lot of verses, because it was right after that I started, learning Torah and then reading the New Testament with Torah understanding. And you come across that verse where Yeshua says, go out and make disciples, make Talmudim. And my thought is that, you really got to let that person know what they're getting into. Because if they're only praying that little prayer so that they don't go to hell when they die, then are they really getting saved? Because that's not the reason to get saved. That's not the reason for it. And
many will come to me in that day and say, Lord, Lord. And even here's all the things that we did. We did healings. We did miracles. We prophesied.
Well, I get it. Yeah. Yeshua will say, depart from me. What he'll add on to that verse is, you didn't do anything. I'm the one that did all the healings and everything. You're just the voice out there. So that's why I say, to me, it's, you've got to teach them to count the cost. What are you getting yourself into here? Do you want to make this commitment for the rest of your life? Otherwise, I'm sorry, I will weep over the fact that, you don't want to, but I'm not also going to teach you how to do this if you're just going to say a little prayer so that you'll miss out. That I can't do it. I personally can't do it. And so that, you and I, we've talked about this before. There's a lot of things. Let's, Wendy's back here. Wendy Wolf. Hi, Wendy. How you doing? It's always good to see you come in. And this is a friend of mine for years and years and years now, Wendy and Cecil Wolf. And she's been coming through on Facebook now that we're also broadcasting on Facebook. And years ago, when Lamb Radio first started, we used to have a special page on the website for, and it's I can't remember what it is. Put it in there in the text, Wendy. What's the name of it's Isaiah something. I can't remember what the name of the ministry is, but her and her husband still go to Mexico on a regular basis and do a lot of ministry. And she says, also, I lived in Mexico, Wendy, before. Oh, yeah, that's you.
That was me.
Okay, so yeah, Wendy, put your International Isaiah 58. That's right. And we used to have a web page I built onto the Messianic Lamb Radio that explained all that, put pictures up there, and had a link to get a hold of them. So they are very dear people to me, wonderful people of the Lord. So you used to go to Mexico too, huh?
Yeah, I lived down there.
Lived down there.
I had a business in the Yucatan Peninsula.
How about that? Boy, oh, Daryl, layers and layers and layers of that guy over there. Boy, you've lived the life then, so,
Some of it I would prefer have not to.
Oh, no regrets. No regrets ever whatsoever. So, all right. Well, this has just kind of been a get to know each other show, which is really good. I love it. I had a topic that I wanted to bring up, or more like a question, I guess, an understanding that I want to talk about today. But do you have something that on your mind that you wanted to discuss? Get different opinions on today, and we can. We still got another couple of shows you and I are going to do next week that we can do different things on. But usually, I'm the one that comes up with the questions and the discussions and everything, and so.
Well, that's your gifting.
That's what I do. I have questions, man. I have red flags. That's what I have. I live my life and I come across something and it's like, oh, red flag. And you go on and then you kind of come back. It's like, you kind of look back on a few days and, oh yeah, there's that red flag back there. What was that again? And, and so I have my own opinions on things, but I don't know. Let me, so you don't have anything specific like you're dealing with or want to talk about or anything like that?
Oh, I have all kinds of things I'm dealing with. But,
I understand. Okay, well then let me let's go to this. And we have a few minutes. We have about 25 minutes left here. When I first came to the Messianic lifestyle, my family and I were learning about the different people and meeting different people in the Messianic lifestyle. I started a website called MessianicDirectory.com and started listing. It was my way of finding other congregations so that I could meet people out there. So I would do searches on anything out on the internet that would show me other people around the world that were also living this lifestyle. And because I didn't know anybody.
Well, I got on this network. That's how you found me.
That's how I found you. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm still doing it today, but I mean, that was back in, oh my gosh, that was like 1998, I think, 98. And I had went to Israel in 95, came back in, so it was 97 or 98 that I started the website. And I came across so many different people and started listing their websites in this directory. And then I would get a hold of these people and let them know that they were on the directory. And so I started meeting different people and getting different responses. Rarely ever got anybody say, no, I don't want to be on your directory. It was like 99.9% everybody wanted to be on there, so that they could be seen by other people.
Right.
And, but I started learning, about the different, it's not denominations, but it's different doctrines, dogmas, different way people saw different things. And within our first 6 months of really living the lifestyle and forsaking the old lifestyle and starting this, we found a congregation, through my search, that we lived in the very southeast corner of Kansas. And we found a congregation in Kansas City. So my wife and I and my daughter drove up to Kansas City. We got a motel room and then went to the synagogue the next day with literally a Messianic synagogue. Now, it may have been in a church, but it was still, a full seating, and they did the liturgy and everything like that. The only thing that we noticed immediately is they knew that we were new people. Of course, it wasn't like a 1,000-seat or anything. It was like probably 50 to 60 people maybe, and they knew we were new. The greeter did, and they asked me our name, and when I said Smith, you could see a facial expression change, and they motioned to somebody, and they came and got us and showed us where we could sit.
Oh,
And,
really?
which was on the second to the back row or the back row,
The back of the bus.
pretty basically. And
Wow.
we didn't know any different, but they did use the word where you can sit. It wasn't that they'll help you find a seat. Like when you go someplace, they have ushers that help you find a seat. That they literally worded it, okay, this is where you can sit. And so we actually blew it off. We really didn't, we didn't play too much into it. But as the service went on, we were not introduced as new people to the congregation. I met the rabbi. I'm not going to mention his name. I can still remember his name because we kind of kept in touch with him a little bit as we went on. But as we started learning about it, we found out that there is a faction within the Messianic lifestyle, where there are basically two different kinds of people. One, remember, this is back in 1995.
Yeah.
It's not so much today, but it is still today. But back then, we learned that there are Hebrew Christians
Yep.
and Messianic Jews.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
And the Hebrew Christians, we found, had their own organization. They are mostly up in the northeastern part of the United States, New York and all that area back up in there. And these people are dominantly Jews that have come to the realization that Yeshua is Messiah, and they they do call themselves Messianic Jews, but more kind of like Hebrew Christians. And so we started learning as we studied it out. My wife and I both started studying it out. And we would call people and we would talk to people, and we kind of got to meet more people and everything. Come to find out that this faction of the Messianic lifestyle, there was a couple of different things. The number one thing is they always, the first question they ask is are you Jewish?
Mm-hmm.
Have you descended from Judaism or from a Jewish family?
Mm-hmm.
And do you know your descendants and that type of thing? And are you straight out, are you Jewish?
Mm-hmm.
Second thing is that early on in my Messianic walk, when we were learning of things and the people that we were meeting, there is a doctrine called Two House, and the Greater Exodus theory. And it's a doctrine, it's a theory, it's an understanding. And we studied it out, and we couldn't find anything wrong with that. But these people were more of Jewish people. Their descendants were Jews, but they didn't have any problem with whether you were Gentile or Jew. It was just not a problem. They didn't ask you. They didn't care. Do you love Yeshua? Do you have an understanding of Torah? Do you want to be taught? This type of thing. Whereas the other faction is, oh, okay, you're not Jewish. Do you know about the Noahide laws? You are welcome to. And I interviewed. Do you know who Daniel Juster is?
Oh yeah.
Okay, I interviewed Daniel Juster one time, and we had a great interview. But at the end of the interview, I asked him about, what's your take on Gentiles coming into the faction, the lifestyle, and his answer was basically, we understand that there are a lot of Gentiles that are wanting to adhere to the culture of Israel, the culture of Judaism and that type of thing, and we think it's wonderful that they adhere to that. And I say, so what is your response to a Gentile that would say that sounds like you're treating me as a second-class citizen rather than as anybody else?
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't say another word, took his microphone off, cut the connection, and he was gone.
There's actually a Messianic synagogue in Toronto that pretty much holds to the same idea. Now, I'm not Two House at all. And I think
I knew that from the first time we talked.
Yeah, and I think again it puts the emphasis on the wrong thing. My wife, although she looks it, is not of Jewish background, and to me there's no distinction between Jew and Gentile, and I think I can actually back that up scripturally.
We all can. But it is an interpretation, though, because they can look at the exact same scripture and give you a totally different interpretation.
But what Paul is saying is that before Messiah, it doesn't matter what you are. We're all created in the image of God. And the fact that at some point in time in history, God chose a particular person to begin a nation, to create a nation of, so that he could reveal himself to the world. But Israel, and this, again, it goes back to the name of our ministry, Or L'Goyim, a light to the nations. This one distinctive nation was supposed to be a beacon of light, to draw, like a lighthouse, to draw all the nations back to God. God, up until that point, had worked with individuals, whether it be Enoch or Noah or whoever. But at this point in history, now God says, okay, now we're going to create a nation, because I've got to start revealing to people what family and nationhood really looks like. But we still all bleed the same way. We still all have 2 eyes, 2 ears, 2 legs, 2 arms. DNA, there's absolutely no difference as to whether, well, with Jewish people in the DNA, there's the 4 amino acid, and then there's a question mark. So we have an extra one there. So that's how Jewish people are genetically different. We have a question mark in our DNA because we ask a bunch of questions. So, but other than that, so for me, the president of the board of my directors is the board of directors, the ministry is not Jewish. Now, he has adopted a messianic lifestyle. His wife is Jewish, and he's been living this lifestyle for longer than I've been in the faith. And so for me, there's no distinction between. Now, it's when the Gentiles try to be Jewish or try to be more Jewish than the Jews that I really, have an issue with this. And my wife.
I've heard your discussion on that. I know how you feel about that.
Well, and my wife actually went through this because when the messianic approach was revealed to her, she had a strong desire to convert to Judaism because she thought, well, the church isn't doing this, the Jews are doing this, and I need to go. But then when she went to the synagogue, and when her Jewish friend, who's not a believer, it was actually her dance partner. Because Milena she was a salsa teacher, and her dance partner was Jewish. And so she goes to the synagogue with him. She says, well, I want to be introduced to the rabbi because I want to convert to Judaism. He says, fine. But he says to her, you're going to have to give up this Jesus thing. Well, now she's left with a conundrum. And then she began to realize that, even if she converts to Judaism, she's never going to be accepted as a legitimate Jew. So why bother going through that process? But also, God said to her, it doesn't matter what you were born as. That has as long as you're living the lifestyle. And so for me, you've got 7 verses that I can, off the top of my head, pull up from Torah that says that Jews and Gentiles have to keep the same commandments. It doesn't matter. So it doesn't matter what you're born as. What matters is this is the way God made you. Okay. And that's why the whole issue of circumcision comes up in the new covenant. Not that circumcision is offensive to God, but if you're doing it in order to be more righteous, in order to be saved, then it's useless. If you're doing it to identify with the Commonwealth of Israel, which is what you've been called to, then by all means go ahead. But it's not a salvific issue. And so we've got to make these distinctions. And a big part of my ministry has always been, what is biblical? What is it that God is really saying? And what is humanity getting off track on? And this happens more so, I believe, in the Messianic movement than it does in mainstream Christianity, because mainstream Christianity is such a hodgepodge of different things that you really got to focus on your own little, corner of the community. But in Messianic Judaism, because of the revelation that we're missing out on so much, then they want to take it a whole step further. And then they want to figure out, well, what is it that the rabbinic Jews have that we don't have, and try to mesh it all together. And it becomes a mess.
Chaos.
We get caught up in Alan and I have talked about this numerous times, that there's a particular group on Facebook. You wouldn't believe some of the discussions that happen about how many angels can dance on the head of a pin. They get caught up in, and it always comes back to what Stephen Covey said. The main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. It's the Great Commission. And you know what? Whether you're Jewish or Gentile, whether you wear tzitzit or you don't wear tzitzit, it's a commandment. So I believe we ought to do it. But if you're not going to do it, if you're not convicted of it, then don't do it. If you're not convicted of not eating pork, then don't do it because I tell you to. That's the wrong motivation. You need to have a conviction of the Holy Spirit to be obedient to his commands. Now, I will tell you what the consequences of disobedience is going to be. But I always tell people, and I use this as an extreme way of presenting this, I can't even tell you not to commit adultery. I have no authority to do that. I can strongly warn you against that. I will tell you what the consequences will be, but ultimately, You're a full-grown adult. You have the power to decide as to what you're going to do. And if you decide to go down that road, it's between you and God. All I've done is I've warned you.
Sure.
And so my conscience is clean. I've been a watchman. And that's really what we are as teachers of the word, is we are on what the consequences of disobedience are. We promote what the blessings of obedience are. And then it's between you and God. And so my go-to verse in almost every situation is Philippians 2:12, which says that every man must work out his own salvation.
That's right.
In fear and trembling. And so everybody's going to have a distinction. And so, as you've mentioned many times before, I have a different approach to things than, everybody else pretty much on the network. I mean, we all have our distinctives. But I always try to take a balanced approach, and coming from a Jewish background and having lived the objections and understanding what it is that I came out from, to see Gentiles want to go back into that just baffles me. Why on earth would you want to do that? Why, if you are a Gentile, would you want to become more Jewish than the Jews? It doesn't make any sense to me. God delivered us out of that fake identity that so many Jews have created. My identity as a Jew is now completed in Messiah, just as your identity as a Goy, as a nation, as a Gentile, is completed in Messiah.
Same thing. I get it. I do. I get it so much.
I have no spiritual advantage over you as we stand before Messiah. The advantage that I have, according to what Scripture says, is that the Jewish people were entrusted with the oracles of God, Romans 3:2. And so therefore, what advantage I have is that it is a Jewish faith. It is God created the nation of Israel to explain to the world what the true faith is. And we got to go back to that and understand it from a Hebraic perspective, which is vastly different from a Greco-Roman Western perspective. The two ways of thinking are entirely different. And in order for you to really understand what God is saying, you have to look at it through the eyes of a Jewish believer. And therefore, it's different. Have you ever read Jonathan Cahn's books?
I have.
The guy asked a million questions. You ever notice that?
I get it. I know. I agree. And it's great. I interviewed him way back when he first came out with Scripture.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, it was only like a 20-minute interview, but it was very good. Okay. So, I mean, yes, I have Hebrew, Jewish DNA, on both sides of my parents, as far as we understand that, but I don't pursue it. I don't go out and get a DNA test. I was raised in the First Baptist Church, the whole thing, but
I prefer the Second Baptist Church.
Okay. Well, we'll get into that in a different discussion, because I do want to know, from your perspective, knowing all that we know, and knowing all that the other faction, the other side knows, why are these people, and they have an entire organization that if you're Gentile, you can't even belong to. You can't even, it doesn't make any difference. From your perspective, why are they like that? Why are they treating Gentiles as second-class citizens? I mean, why? I mean, they know the Scriptures, they know Messiah, but why are they treating them? From your perspective, your opinion, I'm not asking you to be the Word of God.
In 2001, 3 months before 9/11, I was on a street outreach campaign in New York City. And it was with Chosen People Ministries. They would do this every year. So you spend 2 weeks at Moody Bible Institute getting trained, and then you go out on the streets of New York. And I challenge anybody, if you want to stretch your boundaries, go hand out tracts to Jewish people in New York City and see what persecution and
and I can only imagine, but I can't imagine.
Man. There were times where I was really glad that I had about 20 years of martial arts training at the time, let me tell you.
To at least defend yourself.
Well, yeah, because my partner, it was really funny because there was one day my partner, she was a 5'2" little Italian woman. And there was one day we were somewhere in downtown Manhattan, and some guy came and grabbed the tracks out of her hand and threw them in the garbage. There was another time some, big, huge guy came by and he shouldered her and she went tumbling along the ground. And I thought, how do you attract all these people? But
they can.
I was, and I think I might have mentioned this before, that, good morning.
Good morning, Yoshi.
Say hi to Mark.
Hi.
Anyway, I'm just telling a story. So let me. No. So anyway, when I was at Moody, and there was about 25, 26 people. So about half a dozen of us were of Jewish background and the rest were Gentiles. And you could really see the distinction because the Gentiles are writing furiously as Dr. Radelnik, who was our main teacher, was explaining all these things. And, everybody who was Jewish said, yep, did that, experienced that, we know that, did that last week, as a matter of fact. And my roommate was a 23-year-old Russian pastor from Oklahoma, I think. Yeah.
Russian pastor from Oklahoma.
He was a Russian pastor from Oklahoma Omaha, Nebraska. He was in Omaha. And I actually did, I did a speaking tour down there. And one night when we get back to the dorm, he turns around and asked me, he says, do Jewish people think that they're better than everybody else? And I thought, oh boy, this is a loaded question. And I paused for a minute and I said, well, yes, they actually do. And he really got indignant about that. And he said, well, how could that be? And this, and that, and the other thing. I said, well, hang on a second here. I said, look at it from this perspective. If every nation in the world at some point in time had tried to exterminate you, wouldn't you think that you were better than everybody else too? And he paused. And then the next day it was really funny because then we were talking about Jewish history and we were talking about the Inquisition, the pogroms in Eastern Europe, and, the anti-Semitism that, came out of mainly the church. So the reason why, to go back to your question, that you've got this whole faction within the Messianic movement that believes that Jewish people are better is because they don't really understand what the chosen people really mean. God says to Israel that he chose them. And so we have the title chosen people, but what were we chosen for? And as I said, we were chosen in order to reveal Messiah to the world, to reveal God's, the person of God and his ways to the entire world. Now, he's very specific in Deuteronomy chapter 7 that we were chosen not because we were a great nation. As a matter of fact, he says, you were the least of all nations, but because I put my love upon you. So it was completely it was nothing that we did. It was nothing of our doing that caused God to say, oh, well, these are the people I'm going to choose. He, in his foresight, in his, eternality, said that I'm going to create a nation and they're going to be chosen to be my emissaries to the world. And so I look at that as being a great responsibility, but also very humbling. The problem you get into is that when the flesh gets in the way, and we see this, as I said, First Baptist Church. Why is it the First Baptist Church? What about second? What about third? Like, what is the point of that name? It's to elevate ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, pride comes before destruction, a haughty look before a fall. And because the Jewish people have been blessed throughout history, we've got the covenant with Abraham upon us. You cannot deny that the Jewish people have God's favor in the world, despite the fact that the gospel is to the Jew first, but tribulation is also to the Jew first, because no matter what's happened in the world, we've been standing in line first. And no nation has been more persecuted throughout history than the Jewish people. But, disproportionately, we win Nobel Prizes. Like we collect them like trading cards. And part of that is because the value system of the Jewish people, that, education, everything else, but part of that is the favor of God. And that's never been completely removed, even if Israel has been walking in disobedience. Because he says that, I will never leave you nor forsake you. And so what happens is that when Jews get saved and they realize that, well, we're chosen, we're first, we're to be the head, not the tail. The gospel was given to us first, and the scriptures were given to us. Pride gets in the way. And then we start thinking that there's a distinction between us, and that, oh, you Gentiles, you need to come and be more like us. That's exactly what they were dealing with in Acts chapter 15. Now, conversely, you have many elements of the church saying that the Jews need to become like us now, and they need not to be circumcised, and they need to worship on Sunday, eat pork, and celebrate Christmas. So you've got it happening on both sides. And so the reason is because the flesh gets in the way. And there's an element of pride. And what we always try to do is we try to grab onto something that makes us superior to everybody else. We want to give God 95% of the glory, but we're going to take 5% for ourselves. And it's something that I got to fight against on both sides in this ministry all the time. I've had Jewish people in my ministry who thought it was their mission to go to the churches and tell everybody what a bunch of idiots that they were. I said, no, you can't do that. But then you have a bunch of pastors who were telling me that I was almost kicked out of the organization, the denomination that ordained me here in Canada, because I said the feast days were for the Gentiles. And the guy who was leading the campaign against me has a Jewish father.
Fun.
So it's like, the song says, clowns to the left of me, jokers to the right.
Great. Yeah, I that's good. That's really good. I like that balanced explanation, and it's very good. And that's what I love about you, brother. You are one of the most balanced people I know, and I can always go to you. You listen, and you learn, and you share, and you use the wisdom that you've gained through the working of Torah in your life, and I appreciate that so much. I kind of have that general idea practically every time, but it's one of those things where it's the same thing as witnessing to somebody that is a Christian and they're so set in their ways that they don't want to hear you. It's the same thing as talking to a Jewish person. But to me, and I've taught this when I teach evangelism, or when you're anybody, even if it's just a regular everyday somebody somebody new you've met and you're getting to know as a friend, and you want to let them know your lifestyle, the number one thing is finding common ground. You have to be able to find common ground. The second thing that you have to know is, what do you believe about my lifestyle or what I'm going to share with you? Because if there is no common ground, most people won't listen to you in the first place. They don't really want to hear what you have to say. And if you don't know what they already believe, and I parenthetically say, I mean, out on the street, I have literally talked to somebody for 10 or 15 minutes about the Bible and about Yeshua and about the lifestyle and everything, only to find out they have no idea. They've never read the Bible. They've never heard the gospel, or they've heard the gospel in such a negative way. They'll listen to you, but then they'll tell you, "Oh, I'm an atheist. I'm not gonna." And you can go from there. But had I started with understanding what they believed, I would have taken it in a different direction rather than waste that 10 or 15 minutes talking to you like you grew up in the Baptist church or something. And so that's why I say, for each individual group of people, like you got even different people like full Holy Ghost filled Christians to the independent fundamental Baptist, country church with 10 people in it, that's been that way for 4,000 years or whatever. These people come from a different understanding, and they come from a different perception of the Bible, a different interpretation of the Bible than other people do. Just like a Jewish person that's Orthodox Jewish, they come from a different interpretation of the Bible. It's the same words, but it's even and from what I understand, because I've heard the stories of how many times Christians have gone to Israel to witness to the Jews, and they end up denying Jesus and converting to Judaism because the Jews know more about the New Testament than you do.
Have you ever heard of the organization Jews for Judaism?
Sure. Oh yeah. I'm very familiar with it.
So we had. You probably don't have. Do you have a chapter down in?
I have no idea because I don't have anything to do with it.
Yeah. So in Toronto, of course, we have a very strong faction. And Jews for Judaism came out of a response to Jews for Jesus, of course, and they label themselves or position themselves as anti-missionaries or counter-missionary organization. And although they loosely claim to, come against anything that is really against Judaism, so whether it be Buddhism or anything, they don't really focus on them. They're only focused on the Messianics. And what they will do, because Jews for Jesus even to this day, and they are a Hebrew Christian organization. They don't believe in following a Messianic lifestyle. They're Christians who happen to be Jewish, but plant themselves in the church and stuff like that. But their primary method of evangelizing is street evangelism. And so what will happen is if they have a campaign, and they'll be out on street corners and stuff like that, when the anti-missionaries get the phone call from some irate Jew, they'll send the counter-missionary over there. And then you start having a dialogue between them. And the anti-missionary his purpose is to distract the missionary from being able to talk to this person and getting in the way. And I've watched this whole dynamic. I've been part of it.
Wow.
I actually had... there was one time we were doing an outreach many, many years ago outside their office. So there was a Messianic synagogue, and then they had set up their office like 2 doors down at the strip mall. And so we decided that we were going to hand out stuff for Rosh Hashanah and stuff like that. And one of our girls, she was Gentile, and she was handing out, tracts and stuff like that. And so I watched this short little Orthodox guy come over and start talking to her. And I looked at him as like, this guy looks familiar. And then I realized, this is the rabbi from Jews for Judaism. He's the education director. So even though he wasn't the executive director, he was the guy. And it was the guy that my uncle, when I was, after I'd been saved for about 3 years, the year after my mom died, he had talked about taking me up to see. Now, my uncle's an atheist, so he doesn't believe in any God, but didn't like the one I did believe in. And so he wanted to take me up to see Jews for Judaism. And so after the year after my mom passed away, which is 20 years ago, next year, and he said, out of honoring your mother. And I said, okay, you want to have a conversation with the rabbi? Bring it on. And so we went, and I actually sat in front of this guy, and we debated this. Now, I'd only been a believer for 3 years, so I didn't know a whole lot back then, but I knew enough to hold my own.
Sure.
And, I was prayed over quite a bit too. So
look out. Look out.
Now, years later, when the rabbi would see me, he would run away. So I see him walk out, and he starts talking to this woman, and she's a Gentile. She doesn't know nothing from nothing about all this, the family dynamics.
Sure.
And I recognized him, and so my job as the leader of the group was to distract the distractor. And so I kind of made my way over, and I greeted him and everything else. And I kind of positioned myself. It was like, you can go carry on with what you were doing. I got this. And this is the kind of, politics and game playing that you got to do, that I needed to pull him away from her so she could do what she was supposed to do, which is go witness to people. And, I'll debate him on some, obscure thing. And I said, well, let me ask you this. And so, we got into this whole discussion. And he thought he was doing a wonderful job by, keeping me busy. But the reality was I was keeping him busy. But Gentiles who come into the movement don't understand that this is the type of stuff that goes on all the time. And many missionaries who are with Jews for Jesus, they have really gotten tripped up when an anti-missionary shows up and they start questioning their faith because they can't answer a lot of the questions. For instance, one of the ones I remember very distinctly in Leviticus chapter 5, verse 11, we always talk about, there's no atonement without blood. Without the shedding of blood, there's no remission of sins. And yet in Leviticus 5:11, it says, if you can't afford the goat, and if you can't afford the 2 turtle doves because you're really poor, then bring 1/10 of an ephah of flour and give it to the priest, and he'll make atonement for you. Well, so the rabbis are saying, well, it's obvious you don't need blood for atonement. There are many other ways. And that really throws you off until you actually read deeper into and Michael Brown actually addresses this in his Answering Jewish Objections to Jesus series, where he says that, you were given flour, but what you did is you put it on the altar with the rest of the blood sacrifices. So you were being included without actually having to present it yourself, which points to the fact that Yeshua's blood was sufficient for the whole world. You don't have to come in and bring your own sacrifice.
Wow, interesting.
But from a theological perspective, if you get hit with that and you don't have a good basis, and what really burns me about what J4J does and other people is they send people out like lambs to the slaughter. They don't prepare them properly. And if you're going to tussle with the enemy, you better know what the enemy is saying. I actually, even before my uncle took me to see the rabbi from Jews for Judaism, I went to a couple of their seminars, having no idea that my meeting was coming up soon. But it was like, I got to know what the enemy is saying. If I'm going to be out there putting myself out on the front lines, I better know what he's saying. If a Jehovah's Witness comes to my door, I better have studied Jehovah's Witness theology so I can say, you're on crack.
You're right. 100% right. No man goes into battle without first counting cost.
Whew.
That's all there is to it.
Doing it all the time.
I know.
And they're getting slaughtered out there.
I know. I agree, brother. That is why I say I used to teach evangelism, because don't go out there and just get people saved. It doesn't work that way at all. And I we can get into that. That's what does Peter say? What?
What does Peter say? Study and show yourself approved, a
That's
worker who need not be ashamed.
That's right. Exactly.
Open up your Bible.
Exactly.
So I really think, and I know we got to wrap it up here, I really look at my ministry as teaching people how to walk this out, but really fighting hard against watching people spin out into all kinds of funky directions. What are we focused on? We're focused on proclaiming the gospel, but also growing in our relationship. And so when you look at our mission statement, we preach the gospel to the Jews, we help Gentiles reconnect to their Hebraic roots so that we can worship as one new man and expand the kingdom until his return. And if you get focused, we can discuss two-house, we can discuss, flat earth, we can discuss all these things, but if it's going to distract us from what we're really supposed to be focusing on, which is the proclaiming of the gospel and helping people walk this lifestyle out, then I have no time for it. And I am adamant about that kind of stuff. And people get offended with how strong I come against it. But you know what? My mother died in my arms after I was only saved for 2 years. I held her and watched the life go from her eyes. You know what? Time is short. And we got people going to hell in their sins all the time. And we're sitting there and we're arguing about this, that, and the other thing. And you know what? It really pisses me off. Because I buried far too many of my family members who didn't know the gospel. I just went to my uncle's funeral 4 weeks ago, who was heavily involved in Kabbalah for about 15 years. I know where that guy went. In large part because of the stupidity that the Messianic movement gets caught up in is the reason why we're not penetrating the Jewish community.
Well said, brother. Well said. Very, very, very well. It's also why we're not reaching any other community too. It really is. And so I agree with you. All right, brother. Well, okay. Then I think we're going to close it up here. I want to remind everybody, thank you, Daryl, by the way, for all your insight there. I love to hear you teach on what you know. I don't love to hear you teach on what you don't know. But
I don't like to hear me talk about what I don't know either.
Anyway, go to let's see, go to messianiclambradio.com and learn about the Messianic Lamb Network. We are a group of Messianic ministries. Each one of us have our own individual ministry that we bring into this network that we share. And isn't that what it's all about? It's about gathering and not scattering. It's about community and not individualism. There's nothing wrong with you having your own ministry, dwelling on specific doctrines, and there's nothing wrong with disagreeing in those doctrines. But it is all about coming together. I love the old saying of two Jews, 3 opinions. You can have 2 Jews that fight over disagreements in what they believe and what this scripture says. They can knock down, drag out, fight. 2 different opinions, and then the third opinion is they shake hands and they go to lunch together. That to me is what it's all about. Is that we don't want to fight, but it's still being able to disagree and smile and laugh together and have a good time and go on, because that's where we learn. I mean, if I don't learn something new about my God and the people that live with me in this lifestyle, then what value? I lost value in that day. And so I enjoy this. I enjoy what we're doing here, and the Lord has richly blessed the Lamb Network. Once again, MessianicLambRadio.com will give you a much better idea of what the whole network is about. And so join us over there. And Daryl and I are going to do another couple of shows next week. I didn't bring this up. Okay, let's go full screen on this. And starting next Sunday, October, well, let's just go here. You're on the War Room tomorrow morning.
Yep.
And then you do your Messianic synagogue service at noon Eastern time on the Sabbath here on the network. And then Sunday, you and I will be doing the Sunday Reason Together and the Monday Reason Together show. And so I'm looking forward to that. Do you know who Dr. David Jones is? Daryl? Sorry, I forgot your name there for a second.
No,
I'm old.
Never.
I'm old. You don't know who he is? I'll send you his page.
Okay.
And he is a teacher down in Florida that we post his videos. here on the network. I've known the brother for a long time, and he's a good brother. He is going to join us on, I think, I still haven't heard back, but I think he's going to join us Sunday. Okay. So that ought to be fun, is to, get to know each other and talk about things. And I love these subjects, man. This is fun to do. So that's next week. And other than that, it's been a good time, and I appreciate you, brother, and all that you do.
Appreciate being here.
All right. So we'll see you tomorrow morning on the War Room Show, and that will be worth watching. And so we'll talk to you soon. Love you, brother. Right. Here we go. Is this right?
We'll be dancing in the streets, dancing at his feet.